queria começar por agradecer à equipa do São Luís Teatro Municipal pelo acolhimento, fantástico como sempre, e pelo apoio na realização desta conferência. Agradecer também a todas as pessoas que aceitaram o nosso convite para estarem presentes nesta conferência, quer como oradores, quer como moderadores. E dizer-vos que a Conferência Anual da Acesso Cultura é um dos momentos altos do nosso ano. É também um momento de reflexão, de pensarmos em conjunto sobre temas relacionados e diretamente relacionados com a acessibilidade e com o acesso à participação cultural. E este ano posso-vos dizer que estamos muito felizes com o tema escolhido desta conferência, Missão e os Valores das Organizações Culturais. É um tema que nos é muito caro, é um tema que faz parte de uma das nossas ações de capacitação e, portanto, estamos muito expectantes e muito felizes de poder estar aqui. Em relação à missão e aos valores, acreditamos que são ferramentas essenciais, embora muitas vezes desvalorizadas, para a gestão de uma organização cultural. E creio que teremos belíssimas oportunidades ao longo do dia para podermos pensar em conjunto na importância de definir e divulgar publicamente a missão e os valores de uma organização cultural. De seguida, queria agradecer aos colegas da Direção da Acesso Cultura, o nosso vice-presidente Hugo Sousa virá da parte da tarde, mas queria agradecer à Inês Ferreira, à Joana Reais e à Ana Sofia Nunes. Tem sido uma viagem maravilhosa esta de pertencer à Acesso Cultura. E antes de passar ao início do nosso programa, queria também dizer um especial agradecimento à nossa diretora executiva pela capacidade incrível de trabalho, profissionalismo, dedicação. Queria-vos pedir um aplauso, já que ela hoje não pode, queria-vos pedir um aplauso para a nossa diretora Maria Blarro. Obrigada. E começamos o nosso programa da melhor maneira, com a nossa keynote speaker, Līva Kreislere. Estava só a olhar para ela para saber se tinha dito bem o apelido. A Līva é arquiteta, urbanista e educadora e vai falar connosco nesta primeira parte sobre este conceito de planeamento cultural. E o planeamento cultural aborda o desenvolvimento urbano sob o prisma da cultura. Centra-se diretamente no envolvimento dos cidadãos, dos parceiros culturais locais, ativos e do governo local. Estou eu pessoalmente muito curiosa para ouvir a Līva, espero que também estejam. Um ótimo dia de conferência para todos os que estão aqui. Obrigada e até já. Līva, can I ask you please to come? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So you told about me, right? And
I just told you that you are an architect, an urbanist, and an educator, and I gave just a slight hint of what is cultural planning. Just a very slight. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. This is beautiful, beautiful venue, and so many people have come. I'm so happy that there's so much energy within the culture sector. I'm excited to learn more about it. So today I'm going to have a little talk about cultural planning. I guess it's in a way there's nothing new, but maybe some shift of how we talk about culture and how we talk about planning, how we talk about cities. So yeah, maybe I'll be sitting. So yeah, I'm an architect and urbanist, and just to give a little actually, so there will be pictures and information on the screen. So please try and also to sit closer if you would like to see more. So I've been very lucky to collaborate with Trevor Davis, and he's a person who actually is practicing cultural planning through culture in Denmark since the 80s. And he's running this massive organization and practice, Metropolis Art and Performance in Public Space in Denmark. And I've been so lucky to be collaborating with him on urban cultural planning project on 2 different levels. So the one that is with the blue lines, we were working with 10 different neighborhoods around the Baltic Sea region, up to 10,000 people. So cultural planning is also something ideally you practice on a neighborhood level. And then actually we worked a couple of years later on a rural cultural planning project where we looked at towns up to 10,000 people. And we were trying to see if neighborhood in a big city can be similar to a regional town. And along that, of course, yeah, I'm also practicing on my own, working with Riga City. I'm from Latvia and Riga myself. And I've been, I'm an architect. I work a lot with culture, with the temporary use, markets, and design also. And so just to set the scene a little bit, I love to use this kind of speculative statement saying we have lost the sense of the city and we have lost the sense of the citizenship. And, when we look at the modern world, are we actually closer together? We've never been this urban. No, we've never lived so close to one another. But are we actually closer to one another? Is there a loneliness epidemic we're actually talking about? We've never been so connected through social media, and yet we're increasingly lonely, and we're increasingly living next to one another, not knowing who our neighbor is. I will give some examples from Riga, after the Russian invasion in Ukraine, we realized how many Russian-speaking bubbles we still have in Riga, who are entirely living in their own bubbles, and they are living in their own media circles, and they're going to their own schools, and it's so easy actually to still live in our own bubbles. And that's why sometimes when election comes, there are so many surprises, and you didn't know who you're living next to. Cities, why this sense of citizenship? Also, for me as a young person, and I'm sure you also experience that, it feels like we're citizens of the world. We can go anywhere, especially in Europe. You travel, you work here, you study there. And we've lost a sense of roots also somehow. We just pack it up and go somewhere else. And this kind of fast movement is taking away our sense of citizenship. Because if I feel like I'm going to stay in this place for 20 years, then maybe I will be more, involved in how this place looks and how it is for my kids. And it's not to say this is evil or wrong direction, it's just kind of the new reality. So also sometimes I just wonder, what is it that we really love about our cities, and why we choose to live in one city and not the other. And of course, for me at least, it is culture, it is the soft processes, it is the people, it's the unexpected things, the colorful things, the parties, the festivals, and the infrastructure is secondary. But still, kind of, there is a dissonance between kind of the infrastructure and the culture. I can visualize this by this reaction against Riga European Capital of Culture in 2014. In that time, you can imagine after 2008, after the crash, so many people lost the jobs, and actually a lot of them turned to creative industries. A lot of people opened galleries, opened studios, performance spaces, little pop-up cafes, and that created Riga really very vibrant, but also at the same time left a lot of buildings very empty. And there was this action with these yellow stickers. 10,000 stickers were printed, and it said "Occupy me" on the stickers. And 10,000 stickers were distributed amongst just any activists, and they were placing them on empty windows. And this was a reaction against ECOC funding, because ECOC at that time, now it's changed. And now they're really looking as a culture more broadly, but at that time they were giving millions to big theaters, museums, operas, and the culture sector was saying, but hey, actually we are also the city, we are the culture, we are the creatives. So kind of this was the first, for me actually also, I started then working for this organization who did it. It was so inspiring because it was physical, it was mapping, it was activist, and I realized, okay, so this is soft process which can create a lot of change. And so I can see, of course, there's a lot of tension between, you know, this decision-making and bureaucratic structures which have to be there, but they're very technocratic, and the world is changing faster than they can adapt. And we're having these, you know, town plans which are 20, 25 years, 50 years, even 10 years. It's really hard to plan for changes in the world which happen so fast. You know, governments change, countries get occupied, immigrants. There's a lot of different things that are happening in the cities. And actually this creative side of the city is the one that reacts fastest. You know, we work in this culture sector, we talk about current issues, and we create the city as it is, that a lot of people love. Yeah, so planners, architects, municipality are not the only planners in the process of shaping a city. And so can we plan the unplannable? That's the question. And can we actually plan for things that we don't know what will gonna happen? And basically through these equations or crossed equations, I will try to give a sense of what cultural planning is and what it is not, because it is really hard to actually explain it in one sentence. So it's better to give it through examples, I think. So there you can see a map, which is hand-drawn map by a Finnish artist, Minna Henriksson. She's doing these culture maps. She's going to cities, different cities around Europe, and she's mapping the cultural sector. And you can see this map is very unhierarchical, non-hierarchy, basically. Everything's kind of placed in this bubble, interconnected. Nothing is bigger than the other. Maybe there's longer text. This means maybe there's more context. She's explaining different relationships between the different cultural actors in the city. Maybe there are conflicts. Maybe there are no connections. Maybe there should be connections. Maybe there are missed connections. And she's kind of just drawing this bubble which doesn't have a start or an end. And the cultural planning is trying to do the same thing. We're trying to understand the city or the neighborhood as a whole, with the good things, with the bad things, with the conflicts, with the wishes, the activists, the big museums, the small galleries, the schools that are very active, the academies which have interesting students. Even individual artists maybe play a role in this kind of cultural map of the city. And culture planning is an idea to kind of have one step into the public sector. So how can we actually map these things and then represent them in the planning documents? And it is a way to kind of set the foot in the city hall and say, okay, not only these big ones are important, but actually these small ones are also important. Yes, and culture and human-centered approach reveals that culture is actually closely linked to healthcare, economy, and politics. I guess I don't have to talk about it here because you obviously know how central it is to all these issues. And when we talk about cultural planning in my process with municipalities, actually some some of the biggest achievements are when planning documents start broadening their definition of culture. Because we can stretch it a lot, but we can also say that culture is how we use the public space, how we greet our neighbors, or how we take care of our neighborhoods. Do we plant a garden in front of our door? Do we take care of each other? How we respond to injustices? I don't know how the protest culture is here, but in Latvia, it's not that great. So it's also a culture. Do we do that or do we not do that? Do we speed drive? Do we accept that people speed drive? Where we shop? Do we shop locally? Do we shop organic? Who do we support? How do we celebrate? Yeah, so we can search that is all city culture, people coming down in the morning and having a cup of coffee for 25 years, reading the newspaper, keeping the local bar open. That is culture. It's the culture of the morning ritual, and it does a lot of social things as well. So, and one beautiful example of how culture creates a community resilience is this example of Chicago 1995 tragedy, where during a heat wave, a lot of people died, and especially elderly. Of course, we can understand, okay, elderly are more fragile, but also they're more lonely, they're more isolated. And then afterwards, theorists and planners and researchers were looking at this death map, and they were thinking, okay, so we know for sure that poorer neighborhoods are always hit harder when a catastrophe hits, because it's bad infrastructure, maybe no infrastructure, segregation, lack of resources. But they realized that, okay, actually not all poor neighborhoods were hit that hard, and also like good, better, more affluent neighborhoods were also hit very hard. So there isn't this strong correlation. And he understood that actually, so I'm going to quote him from this book, Palaces for the People. It's by Eric Klinenberg. And he said, what turned out to save lives was social infrastructure. Neighborhoods with strong connections, block clubs, churches, libraries, local shops were resilient even when they were poor. And of course, can we say that local book club is culture? Yoga in the park is culture. Chess club is culture. Activities in the library is a culture. And because we know that this means that the community knows each other. We know who is the weak point in the community. We know who to take care of, who to call. We notice when someone's not coming. Is he okay? And for me, like in our Baltic context, I'm very aware of this community resilience. We know in our communities who has car, who has a basement, who has a bunker, who has a country house, who has a boat. We've never used these things, but we know that actually we have to build around this communal infrastructure. And and sometimes, I'm not great at this. I don't know all my neighbors, but I wish there was some infrastructure where I could get to know them, which is cultural infrastructure. So in Riga, for example, we have this informal 30-year-long tradition of these benches in a park where there's always all these elderly men playing chess. And I would say, okay, so this is informal city culture, this is social sector, and this should be mapped, taken in consideration, and protected. And we shouldn't plan and say, oh, instead of these benches, we're going to now have a playground. Okay, so we have to know that this thing is happening, and we need to take it in consideration. So that's kind of where this, cultural planning could be advocating. Another example could be, like in not tradition. It's it was an infrastructure that they built in each neighborhood. There was a culture house. And this culture house offers a lot of things, and one of the things is, for example, this weaving club. And I just wanted to weave a hat, a stray hat, and it's for free. And I was like, wow, great, the city is paying, for this little, club. And I go there, and I realized this is not about weaving at all. This lady, she is a social worker. She's not, but she is, because during the day, who comes there? Lonely people, people with mental health disorders who are not working, kids after school are coming just because it's their hobby. And what she does, she boils some tea, and there are cookies, and they're weaving, and they're talking about politics. They're talking about what's current. And she's so good at creating this beautiful little community, and it's inside the cultural center, and it's just important to understand that these are, social sector / culture sector. Yes, and of course, culture, we all know that it's an artistic expression also, and most importantly, and it can be politically neutral ground, and it should be. And it should be a way to discuss, learn, and heal, and also build empathy. Culture should be, artistic works should be a way for people to learn about one another, how we live together, and build empathy. And we could argue that can help practice democracy. We understand each other's points of view, and maybe that can help to build our own opinion. So culture is so great. We painted the picture, but yeah, it is difficult to embed it in the normal practice of city planning, because it is so soft and so unpredictable, and you can't calculate every single thing and predict. But also, culture has a bad connotation and kind of practice historically, that culture and art is seen as cherry on top. It's the last thing. It's the last thing on the top when you build a new neighborhood. You just put we're gonna do a little sculpture here. And as the worst case scenario, it can be a gentrification process. And I've seen this firsthand. I was working with this empty industrial site, and these artists, they're coming in, they're struggling. The owner doesn't want to pay for the heat. The owner doesn't want to fix the roof. He's like, okay, you just do your thing. The artists build up this beautiful art space, contemporary classical music, concert space. And the owners are like, wow, people are interested, suddenly all these, these big companies want to have their Christmas parties there, because it's so, so new and so unpolished. And of course, 2 years later, there's, they're out, big bar is in, and this is classic. I don't have to tell you about this, but yeah, it happens. And so culture planning is saying, no, you have to involve in the process locals at the beginning. So not at the end of regeneration process, you just are like, okay, so what kind of sculpture we do here? No, it's the first step. You involve the citizens to talk about what do we want to regenerate? How do we want to regenerate? Yeah, so a shift from kind of the end, the cherry on top, to actually the first step. So if we look at planning in this matrix, I'll just try to demonstrate. So up is human and culturally led, and bottom is infrastructure led, and then controlled and planned, and then interventionist and participatory. We could say that actually, yes, traditional planning, which started in the 80s, it's very much about control, planning, and infrastructure is leading the planning process. And if we if we try to balance it out, it's not to say the traditional planning is bad, there's space for that, but if we want to balance it out, we have to say we need also human and culturally centered planning, and interventionist and participatory. There has to be another arm. And in there, we can place a lot of things which are not really put in the planning documents. Performances, tactical urbanism, temporary art interventions, temporary use. In Latvia, there's no legislation for temporary use. If you want to make a concert hall in an empty factory, you still need to have all the same regulations as if it was new build. That doesn't make any sense. So you need to place some of those out of the normal planning and put it on the other side and say, okay, there are exceptions. Yeah, so there's kind of these two arms, this permanent state of change, which is very hard, I know, to hold it and to say as a city, bureaucrat, that there's always changes in all the documents, and then it's much easier to work with this urban dream of completion, where we know exactly where the bench is going to be in 25 years, but 25 years come, and the population has changed, the needs have changed. No one needs a kindergarten, now it needs to be a senior home, and we didn't know that 25 years ago. So yeah, cultural planning is trying to accommodate for an urbanism which is cyclic, layered, and actually where we're saying that emotional condition of the community is just as important as the infrastructural state of the community. During this process with the communities, we saw, when we worked with the cities, the partners in the public sector, sometimes it's a cultural department, sometimes it's development department, but in Germany, we worked with social department because they were pouring money year after year in the statistically the worst neighborhood with the highest crime rate. They were pouring money in infrastructure, and they were like, there's no change. We see no change in that. So the social department was the one who said, okay, we want to try a different path, because infrastructure will not always solve these issues. Sometimes, for instance, it's even just bad, how do you call it, bad stigmatized neighborhoods. That's very serious when a child is growing up in a stigmatized neighborhood. It can really impact the way they grow, how much they engage in crime and things like that. So for instance, you can't tackle stigma with infrastructure. Or maybe sometimes you can, but yeah. So yeah, cultural planning is not saying this needs to happen here. Cultural planning is saying what is happening here. Cultural planning should start with, okay, we don't know anything about this place. We're going to have a 2-year-long mapping project. We're going to look at everything that's going on here. We're going to interview people. We're going to map everything. And then we want to know actually what is driving this community, what is important for them. Even the kids' perspectives, the seniors' perspectives, the hidden emotional part of the city. And yeah, what is cultural planning not? It's not creating a place for people to display their art. You know, sometimes that is how people understand city culture. They're like, okay, so we're gonna make this public, what's it called even? We call it estrada. It's outdoor theater space, and now there's going to be culture, and people are going to come and sit and consume culture. And that is kind of the wrong point of view, because you shouldn't look at a society as consumers and you're going to throw product at them and they're going to consume. You should look at it more as a dialogue. And sometimes I think, for us at least, and I'm sure like most of Europe is experiencing now cultural funding cuts, and it is also in a way understandable, but I think there's still this stigma that culture is dead end for budgets. They look at cultural budgets and they're seeing that there's no return in a way. As if you invest in roads, there's so much return you can calculate. And investing in culture, it's not so straightforward. So to go against this consumer and performer narrative would be very helpful to shift that. For instance, in Latvia, we had this bad example of a mural which was painted on a school during the summer. And the school came back and they were like, what is this? The kids were like, oh, what are these naked angels? I mean, the kids don't care, actually, but the parents, they're like, what are these naked angels? And this mural was a dedication to a dead artist, her early works, where there are the devil, angel, naked ladies. And this very great artist just painted it, and it's this. And then, of course, the city is saying, okay, no more public art. This is stirring too much discussion. But it was the wrong approach. Like, why did you not talk to the school? Why did you not involve the kids? It could have been double as good. So this kind of audience performer is still in also this kind of setting. So one way we also are looking at neighborhoods is, I don't know how much you can see, it's these social network maps to see who is key in the neighborhood, who is connected to who is this decision maker. Sometimes we saw that the neighborhoods don't, there's so many missing links. People don't talk, they don't collaborate. And then the question is why? So what we're saying is that we have to find a local DNA. Maybe that's a good word. And when you, in the process of finding this local DNA, I think you very fast go against this theming culture, where cities are being rebranded as the city of students, the city of finance, or there's different kinds of brands you can give to cities and neighborhoods. But I have an example with one of the rural cities we worked with. They had this slogan, calm place for inspiration. It's in a really beautiful landscape. But while they were developing this, as it goes very slow in the municipalities, there was this new private developer who bought a former factory, and he built this really big concert space, outdoor space, kids playground, restaurant, hotel. It sounds crazy, but it's actually done in a very respectful and good way. But it is in a landscape, it is on a hill, and the whole valley, they hear the concerts, and they're like, but we're the calm space for inspiration, but you're that, but also you're this, you're all these things, and you cannot just say you're this. That really excludes a lot of things from happening. So this is, again, this unplannable thing. You cannot plan that someone's gonna, come and do this, one thing or another. So another way we can define culture planning is that the aim is to create places of encounter and empathy. Charles Landry, who is also a really great thinker and writer about creative bureaucracy and culture planning, he's saying that there should be spaces where I wouldn't mind being with someone else. And this is, in modern day and age, so rare, where a public space, and for me, actually, these are mostly art projects and cultural projects. For instance, this very basic project of lights in the city. In November, we have this Enlighten the City project, where it's all these projections on buildings, and you go out and it's like thousands of people with families, and it's the best mix of all the social groups, because everyone just wants to see the facade with the moving lights. And it's just this magical little moment. You stand on the street and you're like, okay, it's nice, it's interesting, and everyone's kind of interested in it. And that's the power of culture. Even the smallest change in the urban environment, which creates it a bit more magical, you kind of are out there with everyone else and you're all like, wow, isn't this like interesting? And it creates for a moment this sense of, okay, I don't mind being with you here. And for instance, it's a pity you probably can't see too well. I'm going to try to tell about it in a vivid way. So there's this project, as an example, I wanted to give this beautiful, also my partner's Trevor Davis's project in Copenhagen. It's called Grand Ensemble. It's a series of works created for specific apartment blocks involving the local inhabitants of the apartments. And it has to take place on a building, in a building, which has balconies. And so the orchestra is co-writing a piece specially made for this apartment block with the local inhabitants. They're going into the apartments and they're recording your domestic sounds, your baby crying, your dog barking, and they're laying that on top with an orchestra. And on each balcony there's a separate musician. And what happens here, actually, the background of this is as important as the piece itself, because in order for this to happen, you actually all have to kind of say yes to this. You have to say yes to this meaningless, time-consuming thing, which is an art project, and you have to let them in. And then afterwards, what happens is actually you're just, it's for you. You're just gathering with all your neighbors in your courtyard, and you're listening to this piece, and you're just, the place you're living in normally, it's completely transformed. You will never look at it the same. And for me, this is beautiful. I would love to see it in our local micro-rayon buildings in Latvia, because what is the biggest problem for us is that people actually cannot agree on a single thing. They cannot agree to pitch in and change the door, not even talking about the green goals of climate neutrality, to change the windows or the roof. But to agree to just let someone in your apartment for 2 hours and then come to a concert, I think it's like a first step to then maybe to agree to change the door or the windows. And yeah, and if not, then still you get to see your neighbors out and listen to music and just always carry this collective thing that happened to you together. And maybe when you come down next time, you're just gonna, say hi, because like, wow, we had a concert. Isn't that, it's like a small talk thing also. Another thing that's quite interesting is open house project. It's kind of international. I think it's all across Europe. Different organizations can apply to do an open house festival. And in Gdansk, where we worked, through our project, they actually said, okay, we want to open up apartments in this massive apartment block, which is like one of the largest, longest apartment blocks in eastern Poland. No, eastern, or the whole Poland, actually. And they just wanted to open different apartment blocks, so people are so interested seeing how others live. And it's like, it's not even really culture, it's kind of, curiosity to go and see how others live, but it creates such lasting impact of empathy and understanding of others. And in terms of changing your perception of the city, from like a more artistic object point of view, there is this artist Olivier Grostet, who works with cardboard boxes and tape as a material. And he creates these processes with local kids in towns where they decide what kind of monument they want to build. And his method is really interesting. He says that actually, okay, let's build an existing monument, and very often they build Notre Dame or like Arc de Triomphe, and they bring it to their neighborhood. And they close the street, they build it. It's a collective process. You can't see it, but it's basically, they have all these cardboard boxes, they tape them together, and then everyone around kind of lifts it, and then they do it again. And it's massive, it's like 1-to-1 scale, almost. And they just close the street, build this monument, and then it's there, and then the rain comes, and it like plops down, and everyone's like jumping on it, and that's it. And it's really just a collective, fun moment to also question maybe what could be here, what's not here, but what could be here, and to maybe think of monuments like, who do we build them for? Why do we need them? What is our monument? To tackle imagination, because that's, of course, culture's best asset, is to change spaces and lets us ask what else could be here. And there's this artist, Caroline Larsen, who's doing similar thing with colorful threads. And I love these examples because they're so simple. She just goes to some places in the city and attaches colorful threads around, and then kids or whoever comes by can just like throw the yarn over, and it's collectively kind of changing the usual public space into some kind of colorful new web. And it doesn't really matter what comes out. What matters is that the place is never the same. Next time you're going to go by, it's going to be the colorful place that used to have this yarn. And it also kind of tests or like exercises our muscle of understanding, okay, actually things can change quite quickly. We can change them with our own hands, and it's not that hard, and things are allowed. I can be playful in the public space. Yeah, so cultural planning is trying to advocate for these soft processes and create a planning new normal where these are actually key and cultural actors are key. And so the kind of ideal dynamic for these kind of processes is a triangle between an artistic driver, which could be a cultural organization, anyone who has a creative cultural drive. Sometimes it's just a single artist, the city, municipality, and then the citizens. And kind of it really has to kind of work quite equally. So what we're arguing is that cultural drivers, for instance, a festival, we had this case study in Latvia with this festival who was inhabiting a abandoned fortress. And they created so much energy around them. And like events, festivals, other artistic happenings, they create a lot of talk around them and a lot of energy. People get around it, there's a narrative. And it's a great place to have a conversation with the people. It's a conversation that the city could be curating and saying, okay, so in the next festival, could we have a happening where we ask people how they feel about this, how they feel about that, because it's a great place and a moment in the cultural event to talk about values. It's kind of outside of that rigid system of, okay, so we have a trash problem, we have an infrastructure problem, we have an air pollution problem, and it kind of, each of them goes to a different department, and you write all these different posts and letters. But what about like the whole idea of how we want to live together, our values, what do we imagine for our space, which includes all these different sectors. So we're trying to say to the city that, hey, there's a lot of opportunity to have a dialogue with the citizens through the artistic process. Yeah, and so it's hard for you to see, but yeah, in a way, like fixing local trash problem, it's like a short-term and reality thinking of how people get involved in their city life. But then what about, this kind of dreaming long-term and thinking, what do we really want to see here. And maybe artists are also so great at creating this safe dialogue space where we can talk about really what hurts us and, you know, what our dreams are. And it's not always centered around, you know, a fountain. It can be centered about, you know, traumatic things that have happened there, or like past history things, you know, history trauma. Who is solving that except the cultural sector? Yeah, and so I guess most of you I will see tomorrow, maybe, but it seems like no, because there's more than 60 people here. But I would, yeah, love to continue tomorrow to talk more about the mapping part, because, yeah, what we see in the process is that mapping of understanding what is and not what needs to happen is key to start in a good direction. And these mapping practices can be very artistic. Even the sticker practice or this, sound mapping and photo mapping and interviews and stories and videos, they're all different kinds of mappings which can show the community back to itself. We map things, you know, and we say, oh, look, there's so many resources you have here, and you're not, you know, using them. And it's, yeah, sometimes it can be the whole point of cultural planning. But then, of course, I'll just maybe show you quickly, even though it's hard for you to see. It could be much like deeper process from, you know, an idea to implementation. This can be used long-term. When the city knows they're gonna regenerate an area, then they have a cultural process for like, let's say it really has to be long-term, so like 5 years. You know, you need to have this political mandate. You do a cultural mapping. You do an artistic intervention. And then you do visioning, designing, and implementation, and you always have to communicate. That's why it's like a sandwich. You have to kind of communicate constantly between the citizens and the city. And what we're saying is that culture sector is very capable and often like the key to be able to facilitate this kind of conversation with the citizens. Especially because at one point between mapping and visioning, there's this moment where an artist in residence can come, or some kind of festival can happen, where we completely change the idea for people, how they look at their neighborhood. Even things like walking backwards, you know, artistic performances where you walk backwards, or you have different audio walks, or you listen to stories of people's personal places in the city. Things like that, and also creative, massive artistic installations, they change how you look at the place you always walk in. And after that, you can start visioning for the future. You kind of have to have this disruption, because normality wouldn't give you new ideas. You know, it would be still the same. Okay, we need the trash can, we need the fountain, but what if, you know, we imagine further? So that's why our artistic intervention is very important, to change people's perspectives and trigger more imagination. I hope I was not too fast and quite, you got my message and maybe saw some slides, but tomorrow we're gonna go specifically in this cultural mapping, and I'll show some examples of that. And if you're interested in these 12 neighborhood case studies, this herb cultural planning, I should have actually put the website. It's called herbdocs.eu, herbdocs.eu, and that's where we have a documentation of all the things that happened in these 12 neighborhoods. But I will show tomorrow also all this material. But if you're not there, then that's where you can see it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Līva. Very good, thank you very much. I'm going to switch to Portuguese. Okay, just a second. Temos 5 minutos até à próxima etapa da nossa programação. Se alguém tiver alguma pergunta, algum comentário que queira fazer à Līva, em português ou em inglês, se sentirem mais à vontade em português, nós podemos fazer a tradução. É sempre o princípio para aquecer, então faço eu. Līva, when you mentioned, I really enjoyed this broad notion of what is culture. Like people playing chess in the park and other things. My question is, what I do wonder is there any notion of this broad sense of culture by the political powers, the municipalities of the city? And if there isn't, how can we, all of us, make sense and make them notice that there is a very much broader sense of culture and not just art, visual art, theater and what? Do you have any ideas? How can we alert everyone?
Like I can give a good example, which like the great outcome in Riga case for these neighborhoods was that our partner was Riga City Development Department. So development departments are the ones who are creating these visioning documents, these strategies, and they have all these definitions. And they actually, they changed, like it's actually just about rewriting text. And but they did it in the process because they realized, okay, and that's another thing. So they realized that they cannot make a contract with a cultural institution for a 3-year process where they don't know what the outcome will be. They were like, okay, we only have precedents of what we only have a precedent contracts of, you know, okay, it's going to be a festival, it's going to be an application, it's going to be a discussion, it's going to be a sculpture. And we were saying it's an EU project, so that's like a good case study, that EU projects do help. We were saying in these discussions that actually you need to have a contract with open end where you don't know. And it's risky for the city, but they changed that, they saw it, and I guess it was in the confidence of the EU project with all these other cities that were like, yeah, we're doing it, let's do it, it's okay. And I guess it's important to find, and this is a key takeaway, it doesn't really matter actually which department it is. It only matters the key municipal hero, as we call them, finding that person that understands really what we're talking about, and who is able to take it in the office space and try to change something. I would say that's the first step, yeah, to find the municipal heroes, as we call them, yeah. And then change the papers, yeah, change the strategies and create this new type of contract where you can work with artists without knowing what they will do and trusting them. That's also important.
Making the change permanent. And then you won't need heroes somewhere to look them for.
Yeah, because heroes can burn out and leave also. No, but actually you said, yeah, how to broaden the understanding of culture. I actually don't know what the wording is in their documents now. And I don't think they say, oh, chess players in the park is culture. It's actually, I don't know how they have formatted it, but they have included, and I think they call it soft processes. And I guess you need to define soft processes then, but yeah, it's really about finding the right words to describe things, yeah. Maybe you have a word in Portuguese for this kind of things?
No, we don't. But we'll keep looking.
Yeah, maybe you need to invent words.
Yes.
I can see with culture planning, actually, everyone who's practicing culture planning is saying, oh, actually, it's the wrong name. We should say planning culturally. And now it's like, okay.
Thank you, Līva. We just reached our time. Thank you very much. Obrigada. Terminamos aqui esta primeira parte com a nossa keynote speaker e queria chamar ao palco a nossa diretora executiva Maria Vlacho para a próxima apresentação e informar-vos também que temos um coffee break às 11 e retomamos depois às 11h30, fazemos uma pausa às 13 para o almoço. Creio que voltamos às 14h30, Maria, é isso? 14h30 e teremos outro coffee break da parte da tarde. I was just saying what's going to happen next. Yes, at 11. Maria, por favor, Maria.